Andy Walker, welcome to the Running Loud podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you, my friend. How's life in
Yeah.
Boulder?
It's good. It's been unfortunately I've been out of Boulder too often. So I've been traveling a lot this month specifically because we had the US Trail Half Marathon Championships for the beginning of November and the US 10K Trail Championships. So it's been and I went to the running event, TRE, so it's
Yeah,
been a busy month of traveling and not being in Boulder as much as I'd like.
yeah, but it's exciting to travel around the world and I mean around the US for running related things, races, the running event. So I'm sure we can get a little deeper on what you saw there and just what's been going on over at the competitions that you attended and all the other events. But the main reason why I wanted to have you on this podcast is because I wanted to talk about the trail team that is your project that is now almost 2 years old. And I was reflecting on how there's been a lot of hype and news coming out when the project started, but not as much information on how it's going, especially, a couple of years after it started. And I think there's been some great success stories that deserve to be told. So I thought this could be a fun opportunity to talk about them and to just talk about the project, what the trail team is, because I'm sure a lot of people don't know. So basically, yeah, this is how I wanted to imagine our conversation. So let's maybe start from the concept, the idea that you had a couple of years ago. So what is the trail team? It's basically United States first professional development team for trail running, as you put on the trail team website. But yeah, just describe how the project started and where the idea came from. I think can be a good place to start.
Yeah, it's funny because I always try to remember like throughout the years I've kind of thought about different things that have influenced me as a pro runner that have kind of like led to the path of the trail team. But um it's a lot of little things. Like recently I was reflecting on so I made a US team in 2022 and it was Challenge Selena in Italy. And Lauren Gregory was, I think I met her. She was on a US mountain running team as like a junior, as a U20. And so, anyway, she had made that team as a senior while she was running for University of Arkansas. Um, and like many people who were in that position, she just hadn't raced outside of the country and kind of did a lot of things wrong. She like showed up like the day before. I think she like rolled into Susa like the night before the race, wasn't able to see the course. And just like the little things. And so anyway, I was like thinking about that specific instance this year a lot, just being like, oh, that definitely like influenced me being like, how can I help be a mentor to younger athletes? Like, how can I, as someone who's done this for a chunk of 10 years, um, just give that wisdom and be like, oh, you need to see the course. You need to have like the GPS data on your watch, like just like little things that make sure that your race goes as well as it can. And obviously, like there's things beyond our control, but the things in our control we can work on. Um, so that's a roundabout part to getting to the actual story. But yeah, so in late 2022, I finally started the trail team, which was just an idea of how can I get the best NCAA runners into trail running. Um, Another kind of like little side tangent piece was like Joe Gray and I were making like most of the US teams, and Joe is now 40 and I'm 36. And so at that point, 2 years ago, I was like, Joe and I can't be the like we're doing well, and I think we're good athletes. Joe's an incredible athlete, but like at what point are we gonna like, should we not be making these teams? Because we need young people to replace us. We need the next Joe Grays and the next set of people. So it was really focusing on how can we just promote the sport of trail running at the highest level in the United States and Canada um, by just like filling in the gap for everything that needs to happen. And I think I kind of had a pretty good idea. That's actually sort of how the team ended up, which was um, it's a little bit like recruiting in NCAA. So college teams recruit athletes. They look at what they've done and they kind of like see like, what do you think they can do? Um, and that was just my experience was running in the NCAA and running shorter sub-ultra distance trail running. So I think that's where I wanted to start. Um, but I also took a lot of time, probably a few months before I like officially started the team to ask people what they wanted and needed because I wanted to like listen and not just assume that I knew what was missing in US trail running. Like, of course, I have my own experience, but I wanted to ask everyone I could. So I remember asking a lot of like older athletes, how did they get into trail running? Like, how did it happen? Um, and one piece was like, a lot of people my age just got into trail running by coincidence. Like they'd be maybe fast. Like Joe Gray's was a steeple at Oklahoma State, for example, and I asked him, and he was like, "Yeah, this guy just like invited me to do a race, and so I did it." And then he found out that he liked trail running after college just because of one person inviting him. And I don't think, like, what if that hadn't happened? We would have lost one of our best American athletes ever in the sport. So. Um,
Yeah, I think it happens for so many people. Like so many of us just found themselves in the sport of trail running by chance, just because, you went for a run with a friend and you really enjoyed it, so you wanted to do more, or like you jumped in a race and had a breakthrough result and just kept going.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, so sorry, I feel like I'm getting really long-winded with this answer, but it's just there's a lot of pieces, and I think if you like you're someone who's so in tune with the sport that um we could see kind of how things are changing. And like we've been in the sport long enough to see that young people need to come in, that for some reason some things aren't changing as fast as we'd like. Like there
Yeah.
aren't a lot of college runners, there isn't a lot of media towards in the US at least, like towards that demographic. Like NCAA runners aren't sitting in their like dorm rooms and houses like watching trail races. They
Yeah.
don't know what like the Golden Trail series is. They don't know about UTMB. They just they don't know. And so I think that's really exciting because right now there's so much more changing. Like there's so much more media. There's more pictures, there's more video, there's more um, athletes in the sport. There's more short races that are attainable for younger athletes that are new to trail running if they're coming off of fast running, flat running. So um, I think I could see that coming, but obviously I'm not the only one. I think a lot of us can see those changes, and I just wanted to support that vision of trail running, like one that's positive, that's inclusive, that brings in people who are not in the sport currently, um, that adds to the depth of the sport and really brings that into more mainstream running, just in general.
So do you think it comes down to how popular the sport is? Like ultimately, you want to make the sport more popular so that more people come in and, more opportunities for everyone and the level of the competition goes up and, a bunch of basically positive changes.
Oh, that's a really good question. So, and I
What do you
like that
think it
because
really
you're saying
comes
like,
down to? Like,
yeah, you're like, what's the end result? Like, why?
yeah,
Um, and I think for me, it was there was also a huge motivation behind like again, like the sport of trail running is changing. I could see, I mean, it's still changing a lot right now. Like, for example, um, 200-mile races probably didn't exist a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and now they're like prevalent and they're like being followed by media. So I think, yes, part of it was like I wanted the elite fields to be more deep, but I think I was coming from a perspective of like, what is the experience for pro runners and for like participants in the sport, whether they're pro or not? So maybe your everyday participant, and how can I, as like maybe a leader in the US, shape that future to be the version I want to be of trail running? And specifically, like I think, especially 2 years ago, there was like a lot of tension with like brands kind of
yeah.
um, taking taking their part of the sport and making it lucrative rather than like a good experience for the everyday runner
Yeah.
and for pro runners. And I was worried about that, and I still am. And I think part of what we're doing is not only just like making the sport like the most competitive elite races, but also like thinking about um, just like how to make the most positive future that's environmentally sustainable and like
Mhm.
inclusive to different people. And like I think there's just little different little pieces that are hard to explain, but that I wanted that future of trail running.
Yeah, totally. And what you say is super interesting, and I want to get a little um deeper inside each of the things that you touched. Um, I think like part of it is it comes from a place of almost frustration for what you also experienced and what I experienced, 10, 12 years ago when we got in the sport. There wasn't a ton of opportunities to run professionally. And obviously, we want people who are now coming to the sport to have better opportunities. It's like I wish people didn't have to go through what I have been through, and after 8 or 10 years, make it as a pro runner. I wish that opportunity would come after a couple of years, just because they deserve this opportunity. I believe. Um, and then the second part, I was thinking how I think um, any brand who wants to do something in the sport of trail running or like any sport, if they don't have a positive impact on the people, on the athletes, on the communities, it's probably not going to be sustainable over the long haul, like in the long term, because and it's not even going to be not lucrative, but um, like a good investment for them, because it's not going to work. Like it doesn't benefit the people, and these companies, these corporations are ultimately made by people. So
Mhm.
like making money for the sake of it is not the answer unless they have a positive impact on people. And I think this is slowly starting to shift more towards the people, the athletes, instead of the brands, the money, the product.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you agree, but it's something I've been reflecting on, and I think it's very clear how, compared to 5, 6 years ago, the opportunities now are much better. Brands are not just for the pros, it's everyone is important, from the back of the pack runner to the top elite. But I also see more projects, more attention towards like the recreational side of running that is just as important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and I agree. I think that there's been a positive change in the last few years towards um, like you said, towards supporting people, like whether that's elite athletes with contracts and having like a little bit more say in what um, their running looks like, or whether that's kind of races, maybe listening to feedback and giving a better experience for racers, no matter who they are.
Yeah, also health wise, and just a number of things that if you're an athlete, I think you can understand. It's not just like it's basically how you structure your lifestyle around running. It's not the mere process of training or competing or like strictly running. I think there is like a lifestyle design that goes into the direction of being professional and performing well. So it's all the little things that add up and make you a better athlete ultimately. And I agree, it's not straightforward to maybe find this information or like have someone teach you this information, or like if you have a great coach, maybe you're lucky and yeah, you've got everything figured out. But if not, um, probably not so easy. So that's
Yeah,
why the
and even
trail
like
team is.
that. that makes me think like specifically, um, I think there's a lot of cool things about trail running and trail running culture. But one thing that's interesting is that there's, especially in the US, I feel like there's this ideal of like being by yourself. And I actually don't like that. And that's something I've tried to like maybe shift a little bit because I think people um like a lot of times I run into this vision where people see trail running through it's what's that book, Born to Run
Mhm.
or something, and it's like hasn't changed, which is like the book was written like 20 years ago. Um,
Do you think
and
it's
what
a
I mean by that,
necessity or what is it?
well, I think it's like there's like this independent spirit, and they're like, I want to see myself like in nature by myself, independent, and like I'm gonna be like all these things, right? And I think there's some flaws with that vision because one, it's not very collaborative. And I think like my background in running has been like people make me better, coaching makes me better, like influences, mentors, like people to push back on that. So I think that's a good thing, like to check yourself with others. And you don't have to run with others all the time, but I think that's really positive. Like it's a good thing. Like most of my best friends are from running, and I think that's like a really nice thing. And I also think that that vision is like unsustainable.
Hmm.
Like it's like this independent vision of like me being on a top of a mountain by myself. Like not everyone in the world can do that. And it's like it wouldn't be good for the world if every single person had to like, go to the top of a peak, a snowy peak or something. And so I think um just shifting that into like how can you feel that independence or that freedom or that like um it's funny in like Europe they always say like protagonist, which is like not a thing we would say in the US, but it's like how you can feel like you're in charge and like you can be free and have yeah, I'm kind of lacking of words here, but I think that is the feeling we like, and I think there's different ways than doing it alone. I think there's a way of like working together and collaborative and being outside, whether that's near a city, in your hometown, if that's, there's so many terrains in the world that I think that can look like it just doesn't have to look like this like mountain peak example.
Yeah, 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 I understand. Um, yeah, I don't know, like maybe it's just the fear of not having all the complete freedom that being independent gives you, but
Hmm.
there's also a lot of disadvantages with being by yourself. But I actually see a lot more people, athletes training together and going to races together, um, like sort of team environments, especially around certain places, like definitely Boulder. Maybe another place that comes to my mind is Salt Lake City. Um, not in the idea of like co-located teams that are supported by a single brand, but just athletes that benefit from training together and pushing each other and supporting each other. That's something that I think I'm seeing more and more, like more probably more like in track and field and road running where it's definitely more of a thing. Then a funny thing is that like generally intra running people are athletes are like very friendly to each other. Like we're a very close community, but then we don't like training together so much. And in track is the opposite. Like a lot of people are
Yeah.
training together, but they're not friends with each other. And like, even if you've ever competed in a track race or a road marathon, road race, you don't see the friendship, the bonds, the closer relationships that you see in trail running. Not because people don't respect each other. Sometimes they don't, but I don't know. It's just different, and I think we all like this community aspect that trail running has, but that is in contrast with the other aspect that you were trying to describe.
Yeah, that's really true. And I love that too. I think my wife Carly is always she like absolutely loves when you're in a trail race and you pass someone who like we have like a team now. So we train with people locally in Boulder and with the trail team and she's like cheering people on during the race and so am I,
Yeah,
and I think we've all done that. It's like you
yeah,
pass someone like this year I passed, I'm trying to remember specifically, but like in Headlands, I passed Mason Kopi and he was having a great day. I've run with Mason for a couple of years. He was on the US team with me in Thailand in 2022. But I was like, Mason, you're gonna like pass me in a minute. Like, let's go. Let's keep it up. Like follow me on the downhill and take off on the uphill. And he had a great race. And it was just like that was better, almost better than me having a good race. Like seeing him do well and like being able to like support each other in the middle of the race was great. So I think, yeah, I totally agree that culture is really cool in trail running with them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Also, another thing that I was thinking is how the path to become a professional athlete is different for everyone. Like there is no recipe, there is no single rule set of rules that like guarantees that you go from, college to being a pro or like, you win this race and then you make it as a pro. I mean, there's not even track and field and road running. It's not like if you run sub 15 minute for a 5K, if you're a woman, then you're
Yeah.
automatically a pro. But I think in trail running is even more complicated. So probably the trail team um, is a way to simplify that. Um, how do you say, like the path from just going from like a college athlete or recreational athlete to pro. So what do you think are some of the constraints and like boundaries or problems, issues that people face when they want to make it as a pro, but they don't know how to do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's an easy answer because I feel like I talk to people about this all the time. And for someone like us, it might be simple, but I think let's see. So first thing is skill development. That's one of our, so we have three things for our mission, and it's we
Mhm.
want to help athletes um, basically through media, skill development, and mentorship. Um, and so mentorship might be broader and encompassing some of these other things, but like one is if you're really fast, we had Sarah Carter. Sarah Carter was one of our elite athletes on the trail team this year. She ran for Colorado State University. She was one of the fastest. She won every conference race for the last, I think like six or seven. She won indoor, outdoor, cross country. She won everything. So she's obviously a very good runner, um, extremely good at like tactics on the track and those kind of things, thinking about when to make her move. Um, but like, can she translate that to running up a steep uphill or a technical downhill? It might need a little bit of work coming out of college. So I think, yeah, one thing is just working on like the technical skill development. It's people are a little bit surprised by that maybe, but it's obviously if you're in trail running, you know. But if you're coming from flat running, you don't realize like it's like soccer. Like some people start when they're 2 years old and they're going to be better by the time they're 30 than maybe someone who's never done that before.
Yeah, it's not automatic for sure.
Yeah. So skill development, media. I think we think media is really important because how do you stand out? How do you say who you are? How do you show the world like um, what you're doing? Because I think there's a lot of good athletes that might just we not wait, don't hear about, so they're not visible in big results. They're not showing up a lot. So I think we try to do that with on kind of the smallest level, but it's professional photography and videography and just like building the brand of that athlete. And also just being true to who they are, right? So if someone really loves like flat running, but they're coming to the trails, how can we tell that story? Or if they're like Laura Hamilton on her team, she is a DJ. Like, how can we be like, she's a real person? She loves DJing and trail running and like showing that people are complex and they're not just these like running machines. I think that's really important. So, um, that's one of our big tenets of like how we do that too. Um,
How does it work with mentors? Like I
yeah.
was looking at your website, you have a ton of information. Like I think even the um like what you offer on the website in terms of resources and education is is super important. Like sometimes you don't even know, like just, calendars, for example. We don't have a unified
Yeah.
calendar with like all the Golden Trail series, UTMB and skyrunning and WMRA dates and everything. And you basically put everything together on your website and it's an easy, like very convenient place to check the calendars or like USATF events and such. Um, oh man, I forgot what I was
That's
trying
you're
to say.
talking about mentors.
Oh
It's
yeah,
a
yeah. How does it work
question
with
too.
mentors, for example, and
Yeah,
providing
well,
education to young athletes?
maybe that's a good question for like where we are now and what are the challenges? Because I think
Yeah,
we're 2 years old. We've had a couple different mentors. We've had this year Grayson Murphy and Rachel Tomaichuk help for women. We had Matt Daniels and Chad Hall help for men. Um, Honestly, I think like, gosh, the question is like, how do we like we find a lot of good athletes as a team. We have a lot of people on the team who can find more good athletes. So that's been really good. I think we've found the talent. We like know who's interested in trails
yeah.
before anyone else. Um, I think we're doing a good job of mentoring, and what you're saying is like a lot of runners just come into like trying to enter professional trail running with very little information on how it works. And specifically what you're saying, which is like, what are the series? Why would you run a series? Is that leading towards a goal of being a professional athlete that's sponsored? Is that leading towards making a team? Is that leaning towards making the most money? Like these are all different goals that are really different. And we try to find out like what people want first. So I think like um, finding what people want, the younger athletes, and then helping direct them towards the right experience. Um, and I think it's a work in progress just because it's difficult to like, we've had some great pieces. Like, I think the biggest wins are like when we get together. And
Mhm.
so next year, like the easy answer is like for 2025, we're really focusing on our training camps. And those have been able to get bigger as we've raised more money over the last 2 years. And like this year we had like our best one ever, which was like we had three, but we did one in Grand Lake, Colorado that was a week long. We had like professional photography and we had everybody get together, the mentors, the athletes, and people who were 1 year into the trail team, so they could give that feedback. And so just having like the one-on-one conversations with someone who you want to be in the future, I think is super important, whether
Yeah.
that's someone who's like a year older than you or who's 10 years older than you. And they can help answer those questions because it could be as simple as what races should I do, or it could be way more in depth. So I think, yeah, that's a good question, but we're still figuring it out.
Yeah, I think it's a work in progress. I mean, you don't ever stop learning and also providing resources and education to people. Even just, what are the media in trail running? What are some like of the most influential organizations or media or things that you want to pay attention to or look at if you want to get into trail running? It's not like maybe for us it's an easy answer, but it's not straightforward.
Well, it's changing too. I think
Yeah, it's
this year
changing.
I found it was awesome and exciting because um, I don't want to pick on these races too much, but like in years past, I feel like Leadville 100 has not gotten as much attention. Many years
Yeah,
ago, it did. There's kind of a lull. This year, there was a lot of media there, and I feel like that was really covered. And it was also really exciting with like David Roche doing
hmm,
really well. Like that was his story, and I think that gave more attention to that race. But if you would ask me, like, hey, I want to run 100 and I'm going to get a contract, which race should I do? I probably wouldn't have said Leadville,
yeah,
like that wouldn't have been the top choice. And same with JFK that just happened. I think like I've been aware of that race forever. Garrett on our team won that race like a few years
yeah,
ago. Like no one's talking about like Garrett Cochran's win from JFK. Even though I thought that was crazy. Like when we were originally talking, Garrett's a guy who ran at Berkeley in California, and he ran a sub 4 minute mile, and then within a couple of years won JFK 50. So it's like anyway, it's cool. This year, David Sinclair was running incredibly fast. The media happened to be there to cover that story, and I think that's changing. So, like what you're saying with like, I like mostly, I think I know where like the important races are and where people are going to match up, but it's sometimes even unexpected for me. Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I think it's super interesting, but the two examples that you mentioned, like David Roche at Leadville, obviously the storyline, the record, and the fact that like with his podcast is basically his own media for himself.
yeah.
That created a lot of like a huge resonance, and a lot of people learned about David and his story and Leadville and the record and all of that, besides of course the attention it got because it was an historic record and an historic race and all of that. How much do you think an athlete, so this is maybe complex, but like in a way we're in 2024 in the age of social media and internet, we are our own media. Like we
Hmm.
basically
Yeah.
we're basically requested to tell our own story on social media and generally online and in person. How much is it our responsibility as athletes, and how much it is up to the brands and the general media to tell our own stories?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. I think like I have my opinion. I don't think I have an answer. And last year, probably almost exactly this time last year, I was reflecting on like year one of the trail team. And I think like one win we have done really well, like something we've really succeeded in is media.
Hmm.
And I think I've found a lot of things out, which are probably obvious, but some athletes love doing social media. They love taking pictures. They like it. Some people hate that. And so, um,
Yeah, also because
like,
like as an athlete, that is not your primary job. Like your primary
no,
job is to run, but then we are also requested to post and tell our own stories and be professional and be good with, Instagram videos, YouTube and whatever. But
uh-huh,
we don't have the background, the education to do that. I mean, at least not everyone. So
of course. Yeah, of
where is the
course.
limit?
And I think it's really interesting because, like, I don't want to go too like down that rabbit hole, but um, like, should influencers be like the top of the sport? And I think no, but like,
No.
that's like an extreme example of people who just have the biggest social media following. And then the other side would be, should it only be the fastest, absolute fastest people? And I think there needs to be no, like
No.
the stories are terrible, right? Like no one wants to see someone who just beats everyone, is like terrible at interviews, has no like you can't tell who they are as a person, and you can't like cheer for them because you don't know them.
Yeah,
And I
the
think,
like the inspiration is close to zero. Like this person is inspiring just because he can run fast, but
yeah,
it has very little meaning for
like I'll pick on like
everything
Galen
else.
Rupp, like one of the US's
Yeah,
fastest track runners ever.
exactly.
Like he was not someone who was really personal, I feel like. And so he like kind of hid that. And I think people were like, oh, they liked him because he's fast, but um he
And
did not have a
yeah,
big
that's
social media
completely
following.
okay, of course. Like if an athlete is like that, that's 100% okay. But maybe
Yeah.
it's not the only type of athlete that we should highlight, of course, or like that are important. There is so
Oh
much
yeah.
more than performance in terms of inspiration and stories that we can tell.
Exactly. So I think like what I found last year, which is like it sounds silly, but like I am doubly believing our mission as a team because for young athletes, if you don't want to be an influencer, like if you aren't comfortable with that, I think it's really easy for a team to brag about someone else than for you to brag about
Mm,
yourself.
yeah,
And I
that's a
don't
good
like it
point.
either. Like I don't like posting about myself, but that's what you need to do to build your brand sometimes because no one else is telling that story. But having our team do it because we like each other and because we want to support each other is so easy. And so
Mhm.
for me, helping with like our media, with me, like with our team, sorry, like having a lot of photography and those kind of things, it's so easy to be like, we're so proud of this person, and it's coming from like a really natural way, and it feels right. I think that's an easy answer. It's not the answer for everyone, but like saying let someone like let the team do it rather than
Yeah,
you as
because
the
you're
individual
not
athlete.
bragging about yourself, but there is someone else talking about you for you, basically.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Where does the funding for the team come from, and how do you support your projects?
Yeah. So we've had a pretty small budget actually the last couple of years. It's been around $25,000, which is good, but just like given that what we've done, because we had housing, I probably should write it down, but at like I think 6 or 7 races. So we had housing at Mammoth and Headlands, GoPro.
That's awesome.
Um, we had housing. We didn't have it at Broken Arrow because the race provides a lot of housing, but then we had it at anyway, yeah, we funded camps. We had 3 camps. We did one in Moab, one in Crans-Montana, Switzerland before Sears and all, like pretty big mission things, like with a pretty small budget. So our funding comes from either individual donors, so just people who are giving money because they believe in the cause. We're a nonprofit, so we're associated with American Trail Running Association, and so a lot of people can give money to the team, tax deductible. And then we've also raised money through brands. And we did that better, I'd say, the first year of the trail team. And it's funny because it's a lot of me doing a lot of things. And so I love it. I love doing all the things, but it's interesting. It's been really interesting for me to like try to be a pro athlete, try to do fundraising, try to like coordinate media, to host camps. Like it's been new challenges that,
Yeah.
again, like you're saying, like as an athlete, we're good at certain things. We're probably not good at other things. Like I have a master's of science. I don't have a business degree. And I started a business basically. So some of these things are a challenge for me, and I've reached out for help. Some of which you get more than others just because it's all voluntary from, friends and a big support network. But um, long story short is I think one of the big changes that we've seen that I'm really excited about is I think the first year it was like, again, like December 2022, I'm like pitching this idea to everyone I know, all the pro athletes, anyone who's in charge of anything. And they like, it took an hour maybe, you know what I mean? Like it took a long time to explain, like, oh, we're going to have a team that's going to support NCAA athletes. We're going to help support unsponsored athletes. And we're going to just encourage group running in Boulder, which is like 3 sentences. But for people, they just didn't get it. And then after a year, we had big, Christian Allen, Anna Gibson, Lauren Gregory, like doing super well. We had people make teams. We had Mika, like all these people doing super well. And I think that was relatively visible. But even then, I'd be like, I remember after Broken Arrow, like Anna had won and Mika had been on the podium. And I was trying to like reach out to brands and like cheer for them kind of thing. And people were like, whatever. Like, and I think I was reaching out to um, Martin Gaffuri, and I was just like, hey, can we get like more media in Europe for these people? And I love Martin. I'm not trying to throw him under the bus here, but he was just like, I don't think people like will get it. He's like, just like people don't understand what this is yet. Like, it's not like a European thing. And I was like, it's gonna be, they're gonna race you guys in like a month, Like I was trying to like tell that story, but it hadn't happened yet. Um, so the cool thing is now that it's been 2 full years, I think I've had conversations with 10 or more brands asking for funding and for like basically trying to get free shoes and gear for every athlete on our team just so that they can have that kind of support. And every single brand gets it. Like, I don't think I've had one brand, like they might not be able to give huge amounts of money or something like that, but I think where a year ago they'd be like, I don't know. Now they're like, we proved it to them over the last
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, I think
That's
there is an awareness that the trail team is something that has been successful and has led to good things. So of course, people and brands are more willing to support the cause. I think
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's it.
And
Um,
brands still aren't doing it, which is interesting. Like, I
yeah,
think that's going to catch on. Like, at some point, there's going to be a lot more. Like in the US, there aren't any other pushes to have like young development programs of any level.
yeah.
And so,
We
well, I
don't
shouldn't
have.
say there aren't any. There's very few, and some of them are
Mhm.
up and down. Like North Face did a really cool program last year with mentorship that I really liked. So anyway, there's some.
Yeah, there's not a ton of projects dedicated to young people in trail running and not even in Europe. I mean, some federations, I think, do a pretty decent job in supporting young athletes, but also for, teenagers to get into trail running, it's not super easy. Like, it's not the easiest sport to take up or to approach. It's much easier to get involved in cross country, track and field, and road
Mm.
running instead of trail running. Um, yeah, there's definitely more need to have projects like the trail team everywhere in the world, I think.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk a little bit about the difference between the elite team, the club team, and the boulder team, and yeah, just how you manage the project in person in Boulder?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, there's three parts. The elite team is six athletes, and we're going to do the same next year unless something changes drastically in the next little bit. So basically, we want three men, three women, really focusing on like the highest level of the elite sport. We say, how can we get NCAA athletes to be world champions? It's kind of how we phrase it. But basically, we want athletes who we can um, help succeed at the highest level. That's the elite team. The club team is 30 athletes, and
Wow.
that's athletes all over the US and Canada. And kind of our tagline for that is the 30 best unsponsored athletes. Um, and I think that just gives us more wiggle room. Kind of like when I started the project, it was like we really I wasn't happy with just doing six elite athletes. I was like, this isn't fair. And also like we just talked to like 200 athletes. Like I'd called probably 200 athletes on the phone. And so it seemed like, man, we can help more than six people. So we basically this year we went all in on our club team and we put a lot of like we provided free housing for like those, like I said, those key races to anyone on our club team. So a little bit more financial support, I guess, towards that group because we knew that there's great athletes that have trouble getting to races. They just don't have travel money. They're not sponsored. And so it's just a little boost with that. And then finally, which seems like a pretty different project, but it's just different levels of where people are coming from, I guess, in terms of being a pro or being a college runner. Um, our in-person group in Boulder is just like, why not start local and say
Mhm.
like, how can we help people here? And in Boulder, even though there's a lot of good trail runners, there's like the Boulder Boys, there's some other groups like that. There's not really a open to anyone group for trail running. And even for road running, it's pretty clicky. So it's hard. There's like a lot of, if you're a mediumly good runner, it's kind of frustrating probably because it's hard to find the right fit. So we just wanted to have open practices that are free and for anyone. So I think it's morphed into a little bit faster because we're doing workouts. Like it's not just someone who's like couch to 5K, like just starting running, it would be hard for them. But we've had definitely people who are um, just have very limited running experience coming in our group.
Cool. Yeah. And what are some of the athletes who stand out and maybe some of the success stories that you've had in the last couple of years?
Yeah, man. I think one that keeps always comes to mind is Oakley. So Oakley runs in college currently. She's on our club team. She runs for Utah Valley University, and she is a senior. And this year she came to our running camp in Colorado in Grand Lake. And I met her because she'd been on a U20 team for mountain running. And I think like part of the problem, like you're saying, is like it's hard for anyone, especially it's hard for younger people to get into trail running. So for someone to be on a U20 team is great. Like I think the US does pretty good with finding like the best cross country runners to do that, but they're not trail running typically.
Yeah,
And
exactly. That's
yeah, and that's fine. I think there's a lot of great support through the NCAA system. Like running is great. Like our in the US we have a lot of support for running, just not for
yes.
trail running.
Yeah.
Um, so Oakley was like, "Oh, I know I want to like mountain run. I want to be like a trail runner." And she's um long story short, she basically came to our camp. She was mentored kind of just like naturally by Andy Cornish, who's a woman who's sponsored by Salomon now, who is kind of like maybe Oakley in a few years. She's just like a few years out of college, graduated from University of Vermont about a year ago, and it was really cool because Andy was really like just showing Oakley like all these things, and Oakley went from basically not owning trail shoes at our camp in June to when was it? It was late July was the U.S. mountain running champs, and her, Andy, and Oakley both ran together to be seventh and eighth in the country. And I think for both of them that was a crazy step forward. Like they had no one was being like, oh, these two are like contenders on like the national level. And I think like now we can all see like they've brought each other up to like compete at a higher level through that like mentorship and through that relationship. So I think like that's what I always think about. And um, I'm probably going on way too long about this, but like Oakley went back. She's ran cross country at in university during the fall, and she was like their best runner. And I think like a year ago she was not their best runner.
Hmm.
And so for her to like have confidence in herself
Yeah.
from having this like mountain season and being like I'm like a mountain trail runner and like coming back is so cool. And it's more of like a support system thing rather than a she's not just like training harder than ever. It's
Yeah.
because like she just needed someone to tell her like she can do it and find the right people. So that's one of my favorite stories, I think, from this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's a story that most people didn't know just because, it's not, yeah, I mean, she's not the most famous athlete, of course, but
Yeah.
just because she went from being just average to being a great runner, um, that is maybe relatively new to the sport. So hopefully she will experience even more success in the future. What about some of the examples that you were telling before, like Christian Allen, Anna Gibson, Mika Budouin-Rousseau, Lauren Gregory? Do you consider them technically part of the trail team, even if they're now like technically pro athletes and sponsored by different brands?
Yeah, I think the idea in the beginning was again like maybe based on a college running system. So they're kind of like graduated and they're like alumni. But I think we invite them to be on like our club team and or to be part of what we're doing and like to hopefully step up to be mentors basically. So like I think this year we had um yeah, maybe two things. Like one, I think Christian did a really good job because I think he is really good at kind of just naturally, he's really friendly, and I think he's just naturally good at talking to people. And he decided, even though he's a Nike athlete with his own budget, to like he like roomed with our team at Headlands. Like we just had a bunch of hotel rooms that were like suites with like four people in them or something like that each. And he just like roomed with some of the other guys um, and it's really cool just for him to like just be there and be real, and be like, yeah, of course, like he's doing really well, but he's not just choosing to like go his own way. Um, and so he is mentoring a lot of young athletes and just showing that is like a path that's possible. Um, so that was really cool. I think, yeah, too, like this is very different, but like, how do I feel like if the team's like being successful and like the mission's successful and that was like this year um like going to Moab Trail Half Marathon, which was the US half champs, and going to the 10K champs, it was like and to the mountain running champs. It was all new people. And so I think it's really exciting to see um a lot of young athletes that people haven't heard of like competing for the title. And like Christian Allen won three titles this year. Lauren Gregory won the 10K. It's like new names. It's not necessarily like um the me and Joe Grays of the world, even though
Yeah,
Joe still won the vertical, he's still a great athlete. Like I think it's just nice to see that we're encouraging more people to compete.
yeah,
So
awesome. And how do you see the evolution of the trail team together with the evolution of professional trail running? I mean, we talked about how there's now more opportunities than when we started. And I think it's a very exciting time for an athlete who wants to get involved in the sport and compete at a high level just because there are more of these opportunities. Um, so how do you see the project in, 2 or 3 years and together with the evolution of our sport?
Yeah, I think there's two things. One that's like really important to me, which we've started with, like the whole conversation with, which I think is empowering athletes. And I think that's hard when they stand up to like is sponsorship the ultimate goal? And I think
Hmm.
in our sport a lot of
Good
people
question.
say yes, but I don't know if it has to be. And so just like a quick thought of like where my mind's at, because I think that'll explain some things, but I'm always looking at like Western States 100. And at Western States, a lot of people who win, if they aren't Courtney Dauwalter or Jim Walmsley, they are like unsponsored and have like gotten themselves there. And it's been like years of them training without support from a brand. There's probably support from a lot of other things, like we're saying, like it takes a lot of professionalism to get to that level. And especially now. But I think it's frustrating because like a lot of times it'll be like no support. This athlete like trains for years and years and years. They're at the pinnacle of their sport. They win Western States. Then they get sponsored after they've done the best thing they can do, maybe in the sport. And then it's strange because then they have the support they need, but it's after they've proven themselves, right? They've already climbed this like metaphorical mountain of challenge. Um, so long story short with that is like I want to empower athletes. I've been asking brands the hard questions, whether they like it or not. I'm like, how can we support people before they're good? And most of the time they even, maybe it's not the
Like
answer I like.
make these brands basically bet on the athlete's potential before,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
mean, not
Yeah.
before they show this potential, because I think you also have to bet on yourself and work hard and prove
Yeah.
that you can do certain things. Like you have to be like I don't think it's fair to expect opportunities before you run
Yeah.
fast and put in the work and the training and everything. But obviously, like you don't have to win Western States to
Yeah.
realistically think that you could become a professional athlete. It should happen before then.
Of course. Yeah. So I think it's mostly like the idea is like, I think no matter what, our team is there to support people in a way that's like they're putting in the effort and we're just giving the smallest nudge to make their dreams happen. And so like these people would fall off the map. They wouldn't be in the sport anymore if they didn't get this little thing, whether that's, someone telling them they can, or if it's a flight to a race or whatever, like that's what we want to do. Um, yeah, so I guess with that, just like one more piece, because I know we're probably running out of time too, is just like I think we want to be like OAC. We want to be like the most professional team. Like I think we do want to like set a standard for what support and trail running could be. I think there is a level of professionalism that like includes doing things right. And so it's like you said, like it's training, it's having like PT and chiropractic and massage and those kind of things. Like, and we want to like show that without ruining the underlying like wholesomeness to like who an athlete is and like the work they have to put in. Because it's not like more funding or something will make athletes better. It's like it's just being able to do again like that last little piece. Like the athlete does 95% and we do 5% or less by just like helping them get over the last obstacle.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for the update on the trail team, and it's been very interesting to talk to you, Andy.
Thanks, you too.
Yeah.